Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Essay Writing in English. This is week 7, and we are going to be doing Unit 6 today. A bit of news, since this is week 7, the end of end of April, rather, and we are hopefully going to be meeting in person next week. So this should be our last online lecture unless something changes with the corona situation. But as far as I know, we are still planning to be back in class at Gimcheon University next week. So we'll get to see each other in person, which will be nice. Haven't seen you guys for a long time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. So, as always, I'll go through the vocabulary homework from last time, so you can check that over and see how you did. And then we'll move into our new unit for this week. So we had narrow, which I think last week I told you meant the opposite of wide. So not wide would be the answer there. And then we had, let me grab my pen here. Oh, this will be good. I like this one. I'll use a heart. How about that? Cool. Then we had to ache, which is something aches. You have a toothache or a stomach ache. We know that's a bad feeling. And that didn't work. So let me take another stab at this. This one. Okay. That is, so we said not wide, a bad feeling. To scream, we know that is a loud voice. You scream when you are angry, maybe, or frightened. A dam is something that stops a river. So that goes across a river. Vital, if something is vital, it means it's very important. And so then that would be something that you need. Decayed, we talk about decayed teeth. If you have a problem with your tooth, if you have a cavity, we call that tooth decay. So that would be old. To rush, if you are rushing, you are moving quickly. So that would be fast. A contest, if you have a contest, someone is trying to be a winner, to be the winner, to win the contest. Fur is hair that you find not on a bicycle, but on an animal. If it rains too much, you might have a flood. So that would be too much water. To stir, for example, you take your spoon and you move it around in a circle. You do that with, not with your lawn, not with the grass, but you could do that with your coffee. Stir the sugar in your coffee or milk in your coffee. Or cinnamon. I've actually got cinnamon in my coffee. So I sprinkle in a little cinnamon and then I stir it with my spoon. Number 12, to hide something. If you hide something, that means you cannot see it. So my kids, for example, love to play hide and seek, although they're not very good at hiding. So even when they hide, I can usually see them. To pour, we'll use my coffee example here. You pour coffee from the coffee pot into the coffee mug, and you pour liquids. And if you attempt to do something, you try to do it. Try to do it. All right, so that's for the word associations. And then let's have a quick look at collocations here. Activity 14. Canyon, a canyon. Have you heard of the Grand Canyon? So that is earth that is carved out by water like a river over many years. And so up the sides of that, it's very steep. So that would a steep canyon, a steep canyon. Ought is a kind of an old-fashioned word that means should. Should. And the word that goes with ought is to. So another way to say, like, for example, you should brush your teeth 3 times a day. You could also say you ought to brush your teeth 3 times a day. It's a little bit old-fashioned, although I notice it used much more in British English these days. They still use it quite a bit, and sometimes I hear it in America too. I don't say it myself that often, but I notice it once in a while when I'm watching a movie or a TV show. So feel free to use that instead of saying should. Okay, and now we're talking about the corner of 2 streets. So this street and this street are meeting, and we use on the corner. On the corner. So for example, here, on the corner of these streets. We had pour earlier, pour some liquid from one container into another. So that one doesn't work here. You don't pour an adventure, you seek. Seek is another way to say like look for or search for an adventure. A harsh goal or climate. We use the word harsh to describe a climate. So a difficult climate to live in. It could be very, very cold, for example, like in northern Canada or Siberia. It could also be super, super hot. That could also be harsh. So a difficult climate, place where the weather is very bad, hard to live there. An odd tradition. So an odd tradition would be a tradition that is maybe a little bit strange. Other people might think that it is strange or weird. To find evidence, we find evidence of a problem. Find evidence of a problem. And ancient, well, computers are not really ancient. That's a relatively new technology. So we're going to go with building, a super duper old building. Think about pictures of Greece or the Roman Forum. Those are very old buildings. They are ancient buildings. To consist of is the preposition we need here, to consist of something. So, for example, ramyeon consists of noodles, water, and a spice packet. And finally, then the blank dimmed. If something dims, it means it gets less strong, and we use that to talk about lights. So if the lights dimmed, they became less bright, less bright. In Korea, usually you have a light switch and your lights are on or off. That's it. You have 2 options, on or off. In some houses in America, my dad's house, for example, you can actually turn the switch to make the lights less bright, and that is called dimming the lights. So if you want the lights on, but maybe you don't want them too bright, you can just turn, it's a little knob, and you just turn it a little bit, and that would dim the lights. Okay, so that covers our vocab from last week. And as you'll see here, today we are talking about a specific type of paragraph. We've studied all about paragraphs, how to write them, the features that they have. We've looked at lots of examples, and we've written several of our own paragraphs. And now we're going to get into the different types of paragraphs, different styles of paragraph that you can write. And we're starting with the definition paragraph in Unit 6. Okay, so I mentioned a specific purpose, so the specific type of reason that you're writing the paragraph. And just to quickly go over this, we know what a definition is, right? Define, to say what a word is or means. So in a definition paragraph, you are explaining what a particular word means, what something means. And then that would be usually your topic sentence, would say what it is, and then you'll give, in your supporting sentences, you're going to give facts, details, examples to make it clear to the reader. And as always, the best way to learn about these is to not just talk about what they are, but to look at examples. So let's look at an example here about gumbo. And before you read, it has a few questions here to get you ready to read. So what is seafood? Give 3 examples. So of course, seafood is very common and popular in Korea. I'm sure you have many more than 3 examples, but off the top of my head, I could think about shrimp and let's say mackerel, godeung. So popular fish in Korea. Of course, you've got raw fish like sushi or hui. So lots of examples. And number 2, what do you know about the people of Louisiana? Louisiana is a state in the southern United States. Actually, it's right next to Texas. If you know Texas, it's just east of Texas. And actually, my mother moved to Louisiana a few years ago. So she lives there now, and I have visited one time. It's a very interesting place, very warm place. The people who live in southern Louisiana are called Cajun people, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Number 3, have you ever seen rice growing? You live in Korea, so of course you have. What kind of land is good for that? Well, when I see rice growing, I notice that you need some flat bits of land, and you also need plenty of water. And it can be terraced so that it's like steps of land, so it can be done like on the side of a hill. And number 4, have you visited or read about New Orleans? What do you know about this city? Yes, my mom lives about 40 minutes from New Orleans, so I visited there when I went to see my mom, and it is a party city. It's got a lot of history, and it's also a fun place to hang out. Maybe I'll post a couple of pictures of New Orleans on Canvas so you can see what it looks like. All right, so we're going to read about a food that is from Louisiana, and that is called gumbo. I had some when I visited. So let's read. The dictionary definition of gumbo does not make it sound as delicious as gumbo really is. The dictionary defines gumbo as a thick soup made in South Louisiana. However, anyone who has tasted this delicious dish knows that this definition is too bland to describe gumbo. It is true that gumbo is a thick soup, but it is much more than that. Gumbo, one of the most popular of all Cajun dishes, is made with different kinds of seafood or meat mixed with vegetables, such as green peppers and onions. For example, seafood gumbo contains shrimp and crab. Other kinds of gumbo include chicken, sausage, or turkey. Regardless of the ingredients in gumbo, this regional delicacy is a tasty dish. And it is. I actually tried some seafood gumbo, and I thought it was quite good. It's a bit spicy, but I like spicy food, so that was fine for me. My kids were not huge fans of gumbo. So we had some vocabulary words here like bland. This is a good one. So something that doesn't really have much taste. Could be a good meaning or a bad meaning, but it's just not much. We often use it when there's not enough salt in something. Oh, this is kind of bland. It needs more salt or needs more pepper. So this word Cajun we had earlier, these are people who moved from this part of Canada called Acadia. They moved to Louisiana in long time ago in 1755. And so there's a bit of these were French-speaking Canadians. So there's a bit of a French cultural link in Louisiana. Such as just means like. Shrimp, we know. Crab, we know. Turkey, we know. A big bird that Americans eat on Thanksgiving. Regardless of means no matter. And ingredient in Korean is jerio. Regional, from a certain area. Delicacy is a special food, and tasty is delicious. Okay, so we've got our questions down here. We're going to analyze now. So what is the topic sentence? Well, we'll go back to the first sentence. The dictionary definition does not make gumbo sound as delicious as it really is. Okay. All right, one sentence in your own words. So begin your sentence like this. Gumbo is, so you're going to take the definition and just change the words a little bit. So gumbo is, so I might say a kind of soup from Louisiana, right? So I used the basic definition there, but I used my own words. Okay, now the writer quotes a dictionary definition of gumbo. So the writer actually looked in the dictionary, looked up the word gumbo, and then used quotes, these things, to tell us what it is. Right, you see I'm right here. Oops, let me circle the quote marks. Those are the exact words that were in the dictionary, and that's why the writer used quotation marks. We'll talk about that a little bit more later when we do our grammar in this unit. So for number 3 here, you need to choose one of these words and write your own definition. So do not look in a dictionary. Do not use a dictionary, but use your own words to define this. Excuse me for 1 second. It's a bit loud out there. Turn it down, please. Guys, please turn it down. Sorry about that. The kids are watching something on TV. All right, number 4. Now you can go ahead and look in the dictionary for the word that you defined here, and just compare and write a sentence using that definition, just like they did in gumbo, in the gumbo paragraph. And compare your original definition to what you found in the dictionary and notice how different is it. Okay. So now we have another example. I'll leave this for you to do about gossip, defining gossip. What is it? And a couple of questions to analyze it. And then down here we have one more example about one of my kids' favorite foods, which is pretzels. They love to go to Auntie Anne's whenever we go to the department store. So go ahead and do the same thing there. Read that, make a note of vocabulary words you don't know down here, and then go ahead and answer these questions to help analyze the paragraph. I said we would talk a little bit more about quotation marks, and there's a note here about them. This is very important for definition paragraphs because often you're going to use a dictionary to tell your reader what a word means. And if you use the exact same words from the dictionary, those are not your words, right? You didn't make up that sentence. You borrowed. You're borrowing someone else. You're using someone else's words. And when you do that, you have to use quotation marks. Okay? If it's from a book or maybe another person said it, either way, you need to use quotation marks because that shows that they're not your words. You're borrowing them from someone else. And if you don't use them, it's called plagiarism. And plagiarism, you can get in big trouble for doing that. Excuse me. So if you get your definition from a book, for example, the dictionary, make sure you use quotation marks. We have a little activity here to practice quotation marks. So the dictionary defines marriage as, and now we're going to get into this is what the dictionary says. Marriage is the union of a husband and wife. And notice the quotes come after the period. And there's a little note about that here. So here, we'll do this one together. According to the American, this is a good phrase here. You're going to use that a lot if you want to quote somebody. According to the American Heritage Dictionary, an errand is so the dictionary said an errand is short trip for a specific purpose, right? But my trip to the courthouse was certainly not a simple errand. So we got to be careful here about where the definition from this dictionary ends. It says, but my trip, well, that was not in the dictionary. This is the writer speaking again now. So this ends right here. We're going to keep our comma inside our quotation mark. So this is what was taken from the dictionary, these words here. So if I look up this dictionary, if I look up the word errand, I'll find these exact words in there, but not, of course, this part. Okay. And let's do one more. If we believe the dictionary definition of drug as what? A narcotic that is addictive, then surely we must say that cigarettes are used to deliver the drug nicotine. So this, of course, is not, this is the writer speaking again. And so that ends, the quote ends here. Again, keep the comma inside the quotation mark. So this is the part that you'll find in the dictionary. Okay, let's go ahead and do the rest of that for 4 and 5. And then here, these are, it's the same idea, but this is coming from a person speaking rather than from a book, but it's the same process. Okay, I'll let you get on with that. And again, this is just a note here that you need to, it's called citing ideas. So if someone else gave you the idea or the word, if you got that from a book or from something someone said, you need to cite, you need to say where that came from. Okay. And this is getting into academic writing and how you cite, for example, in a research paper. We're not going to need to do that for our paragraphs. But for us, the important thing is to remember to use quotes and say the name of the dictionary in your paragraph if you use a dictionary, or person's name if you're using a quote from a person, so that you can avoid plagiarism. That is the key there. Okay, here we've got a sequencing activity. So these sentences they form one full paragraph, but they are mixed up, and you need to go ahead and find the topic sentence, put number 1 next to that, and then see which supporting sentence comes next, and do that for the rest of them. And then when you find the concluding sentence, you can put a 7 next to that one. So a couple of things to remember here. This similarly will be useful. And I'll help you here with the topic sentence. The keyword method, which can help foreign language learners remember new vocabulary, is gaining popularity among teachers and students. That's going to be our topic sentence. Okay. And then the next one is going to define it. And then you'll have some examples. So you can go ahead and do the rest of those by yourself. And then you're going to give it you're going to take the sentences here once you've got them in order. Write down a good title for, make up a good title, and then write the sentences here. Make sure you indent the first paragraph. Go ahead and write them all down. Then you'll have a perfect sequenced paragraph. And then you're going to analyze that paragraph. So you answer these questions about that paragraph. Okay. Okay. This gives you some information about examples, when to use it. So think about how familiar the topic is to the reader. If they already know about it, you probably don't need to give many examples. But if it's a new topic, then more examples will be helpful. And where should you put them? So the best place, usually just after you explained an idea. So just after you gave a definition, then you can give some examples. Okay. And then this gives you shows you how to begin it. So for instance, for example, an example of this is, those are all great ways to introduce your example. All right, for grammar today, we're doing adjective clauses. And that's a fancy way to talk about words like this, that, and who that explain a noun. So adjective, right, explains a noun, describes a noun. And so it's a clause, it's longer. It's not just one word, it's a phrase that describes a noun, and it begins with one of these words. So if we take our example here, the noun we're going to describe is soup. And we usually use that for a thing. So gumbo is a thick soup. That, what does it do? That contains seafood or meat. So this here is the adjective clause. Okay. If you're talking about a person, we usually use who. So this is describing a soccer player, the goalie, right? We're describing a goalie. What is a goalie? Soccer player. Who does what? It's a player who protects his team's goal. And here's a note here. That or which for things, that is more common, especially in American English. In British English, they use which quite a bit more, but in American English, that is more common. And you can use who or that for people, but who is preferred. Sounds better. Okay, so you got a couple of more examples here about gumbo and samba, a dance that is popular in Brazil. Gumbo is a soup that contains seafood or meat. And here's a picture of gumbo. Okay, so here's an activity to help you recognize adjective clauses. So you're going to underline the adjective clauses, look for the pronouns that and who, and circle the noun that it describes. So they did one for us here. So we found that is there, so we know, okay. So it's a hurricane is a dangerous what? Storm, so that's our noun, that features high winds and heavy rain. So this adjective clause here, beginning with this relative pronoun that, describes what the word storm, okay? In addition, areas along the coast may experience a tidal surge. That, so this word, a surge, and we're going to describe the surge, that can flood whole towns. Hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean occur mostly between April and November. I don't see a relative pronoun there, so there's nothing to do in that sentence. The next one does have one, and you can go ahead and finish that by yourself. Okay. Here you're going to practice writing your own sentences with simple adjective clauses. So they give you a word, for example, turtle, and you need to write a definition using an adjective clause. So it's a slow four-legged animal that, and then what does it do? Goes inside its shell when there is danger. So think about the word co-pilot, skunk, passport, submarine, odd numbers. So for example, a passport is a document, or a passport is a form of ID that, what? That we need to travel to another country, for example. Okay. So you've got 8 of them to do. I would not use a dictionary for this. I think you kind of know what these words all mean already, so try to do a definition in your own words. If you have no idea what the word is, then go ahead and look it up. But I think you know all of these words already. Oh, and there's a couple more. Pele. If you don't know who that is, you might have to look him up. And the UN, you should know what that is. Okay, then we have, this is just a style, about style and how to make longer sentences. So using linking words here like and, but, or, and so, or for, and, nor, but, yet, and so. So using words like this to connect, for example, 2 simple sentences to make your sentences longer, a little bit more complex and more interesting. Okay, and we can do that. I mean, basically what we want to do here is give variety to your sentence. And you can do that with adjectives, right? So describe the nouns here. Like the manager rejected the schedule. Okay, that's kind of boring. Which manager? The current business manager rejected. Tell me more about the schedule. It was Mark's revised schedule. So right there, that it's a longer sentence. It's a little bit more interesting. You can use an adjective clause here, which we just talked about. The students liked the suggestion. Okay, so we're going to use adjective clauses here to describe the students and the suggestion. So which students? The students who are in charge of planning the party, okay, liked the suggestion. Which suggestion? The suggestion that Mark made. So another way to add interest to your sentences. Same thing here with adverbs, adverb clauses, prepositional phrases, and you can combine the simple sentences with our connecting words to make them more interesting. And if you compare example 1 and example 2 here, you'll see it goes from 17 sentences down to 4. So this one is very choppy. I was walking on Stern Street. I was in front of the bank. I heard a bang. It was loud. It was violent. The front door of the bank opened, blah, blah, blah. So you'll see how they transform that to, I was walking in front of the bank on Stern Street. Suddenly I heard a loud, violent bang. and the front door of the bank opened. A tall, very thin man with wavy brown hair hurriedly left the bank. In his right hand, he had a shiny silver gun. So if you read these two, you can see example 2 is much more interesting, much easier to read than example 1. All right. And then here's your chance to practice combining some sentences. So there's a missing sentence here. And you're going to try to take this group of sentences here and combine it into one sentence and put it here. So you're going to use any of these strategies that you can. So combining words, connecting words, or maybe adjective clauses or adverb clauses or prepositional phrases. Look through and see which of these will be most useful for this example. And then you'll do the same thing down here. And again down here. Okay, that brings us to the end of the unit and building better vocabulary. Go ahead and do that. And next week I'll explain, hopefully in class, the answers there. And this is your homework, original student writing. It is also on Canvas already in the form of an online discussion. You're going to choose a topic, any topic you want. You're going to write your own definition paragraph. And please follow these steps. So brainstorm, write a good topic sentence with controlling ideas, supporting sentences, and a concluding sentence. This is important if you use a dictionary, for example, or a different source. Make sure you use quotation marks correctly. This one, if you can, use 5 vocab words, but it's not necessary. So if you can, and if you do, please underline them, but if you don't worry about it. And it says here, if you need help, study the example definition paragraphs. Absolutely. I would go through and choose one of those paragraphs actually to use as an example. So if you want to write about food, defining a food, take that gumbo example and shadow it. We talked about shadowing in a previous lecture where you use the kind of like the skeleton of the paragraph and you change out keywords to make it your own. So I would do that. Look again at all the example paragraphs, think of a topic that you could do of your own, and then follow that example. Be careful, as always, right? Subject verb agreement, capitalization and punctuation, as we always talk about. Make sure you have a title and make sure you indent the first paragraph. Today we talked about quotation marks, so use those properly. And we talked about adjective clauses, so try to use some of those. And look back over the unit if you're having trouble or if you forgot how to use those. And I look forward to seeing your paragraphs, to reading your paragraphs. Also, as always, leave a comment under this video. And I look forward to seeing you all in person next week. If you have any questions, send me a message on Kakao, and I will see you next week. Take care.